afraid that they're going to come across a certain way. And, but so what is a way to be authentic when you're setting boundaries?
I think actually the one thing I'll recommend is doing more research first before you set boundaries, like learn about what a boundary is. Because for me, boundaries, like I'm not gonna lie, like boundaries is still something that I'm like still working through. Like it is, I'm not an expert on boundaries, but I do know from personal experience, like I've been reading this book called The Empowered Boundaries, and then my mom actually recommended The Boundary Boss by Terry Cole, and I think the best advice I can give people is instead of like let's say you're going through a tough time in a relationship or a friendship, sit down and reflect on what those boundaries are first. Think about how you're going to communicate. And one of the new things I'm learning about is nonviolent communication. And that is super, super, super important because you need to know how you truly feel before you can communicate what your needs are and what your boundaries are. And I think that it really does start within you, is like being like, because everyone's going to upset you. Like even your best friend, like we all have bad days, but it's like for me, I do this new thing now where if I'm upset at someone, I don't tell them right away, not because I'm trying to hide it, but I take the time to think about it first and
Yeah.
reflect, right? And then I'm like, hey, I'm ready to talk about this now because otherwise, if you go into it and with a reaction, which most people struggle with, I did too, reacting is actually not beneficial to anyone. It's so important for us to just take this space and be like, hey, I want to set this with you or I want to make this work, but I need time to reflect first, right? I think that's so important. And like with her too, I even explained to her, I said, I want to do this because I love you, because I care about you, right? Like I want to set boundaries with you because I care. And I think a lot of people see boundaries as this bad thing, but it's not. That's how you maintain healthy relationships. And that was the biggest lesson I've learned in boundaries is you actually are doing it because you want to keep the relationship.
Yes. Oh, so good. I love all of that. And it's so
Yeah.
true. It's when you're setting boundaries, it really is because you care and you want to when you want to have healthy and secure relationships. So
Yeah.
absolutely love that. And yeah, it's you've made such a good point too, where it's important to know how you're feeling about the situation. So if something's coming up and you want to set a boundary, but you're not sure, yeah, take that time or share to someone. I need to think about this. I need to feel into my body. So I love that you mentioned Jenna. And so now, Taser, how do I stop people pleasing? Can you take us to a time where you were in that people pleasing stage and what did that look like and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so what I can tell you is I can kind of start from the beginning is I was really badly bullied in high school and middle school. And I had this obsession with being popular and having validation of others and I didn't really have many friends. I had a couple, but I just people would stare at me and it just kind of made me just self-conscious and like people would call me down, like call me names, like all the names in the book. And it really ate me alive and it caused me to just feel really, really like just insecure about myself and I hated myself and then after I graduated, I actually kind of I don't know if I want to say peaked, but I became popular with a different crew, like not people I went to school with, but like different like from a different town and I started to make like 30, 40, 50 friends and I was starting like I was in a group, right? And I started drinking and I kind of built this anger towards people that bullied me and I would, post Snapchats of me giving the finger and like I lost a lot of weight. I started starving myself. I was like, yeah, look at me now, I was like in that cocky attitude, like, yeah, I'm better now. Like, you can't bully me, haha. Like, because I was and I didn't realize it at the time. Like, at the time, I truly didn't think I was doing anything wrong. Like, I was so, like, up myself, like, so, like, yeah, I'm on my high horse type thing because I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. And I felt like when I lost all the weight, I was like, oh, I'm not getting bullied for being fat anymore. Like, like I felt that confidence. And so I don't know if it was like just like I mean, I obviously realized it was a phase, but like I just didn't think I was doing anything wrong. And so, but I realized like deep down, like I was just seeking the validation of others, right? And I think like the bullying in some way kind of formed that people pleasing in me is because I was so obsessed. Like, I need people to like me, and everybody's childhood is different, right? But like I also grew up with like an illness, right? Like with epilepsy. So like that didn't help either. And my childhood was different. I was in the hospital a lot. So my brain did not fully develop the same as other people's. Like I was a little bit, I don't want to say slower, but things that would make sense to someone else didn't make sense to me. And so I had a lot of things that kind of triggered that people pleasing in me, but it was when I hit when I it was about 2019 when I started being for like getting deeper into my friendships with the people that were drinking, and like because I was drinking every weekend. I was never an alcoholic, but I was a heavy drinker and I would drink every single weekend. But it got to the point where some of the friends that I had were very manipulative, and just like it was just unhealthy situation, and I noticed that I couldn't be myself. I was losing who I was becoming angry and playing the victim and like poor me, everybody hates me, blah 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 blah. And then it just kind of got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? And I think it's when we have friends with people for so long, we kind of tend to like get that attachment to them.
Yeah.
And we almost, when we're in that people pleasing, we're like, oh no, it's the end of the world if I cut my ties with this person. But because you're so attached to that like obsession, and you want to be validated. And I know I'm not alone in this, right? Like a lot of people struggle with this, but for me it was more of the war inside my head was just getting to the point where it was eating me alive, right? And when I couldn't truly be myself with my friends, when I was being treated that way, and allowing these people in my life that weren't actually helping me grow, like I was beating myself up at the end of the day. I was sitting in my own toxic poison, right? And that was something that took me years to like realize that I played a huge part in that.
I feel called and guided to ask you this question, which has been coming up for me because you are so authentic, and I know a lot of people really this year have been working on stepping into that. And I'm curious to you, Jenna, what does authenticity mean for you?
Being vulnerable, and
Hmm.
not being afraid to, like, we live in a world. And actually Hillary Burton said it best, because I actually met Hillary Burton at the One Tree Hill convention in November, and she said something about like social media, and you kind of have to, what did she say, something about like you kind of have to put on this facade, or like in social media there's so like I don't remember her exact words, but she said something along the lines like about just like not being fake on social media. Like don't be fake, right? Like there's so much. And this is one thing I've learned too. And I will be honest, like when I had my old Instagram account, like I can admit that I used to be not intentionally fake, but I was posting a lot of selfies. Like this, I don't post as much selfies anymore, like barely ever. But like I think that it's important to it's better to, instead of being scared of being vulnerable and showing the world like who you really are, it actually is better in the long run to show who you really are. It doesn't, obviously there's certain things you keep private, right? We all have, like, I have my boundaries around my social media, but I think that it's important to just be real and just be honest, like, hey, this is my journey, and whatever that journey is, right? Like, hey, like example, like when I went through a recent breakup, I showed a video of me crying of this is my emotions about it, right? Like it depends on I guess, like on what you're talking about on your social media. But for me it's just holding myself accountable and showing the world like I'm human, because we all are. And there's so many entrepreneurs out there that are like, oh, I have a Lamborghini and I'm rich and it's like, okay, that's great and everything, but why don't you show how you got there? Why do we have to show just the success part of building a business? Show how much work it is. Show the pros and cons about building a business, right? And I think so many, and then it also creates a false, I don't want to say false reality for people, but like it creates this unrealistic expectation for people, that people just think, oh, being an entrepreneur means I get to be rich. Like there's so much more to being a businesswoman than just having money. Like there's so much that goes into it. And when you show that you're rich, and your life is, and you don't show anything negative, or you don't show the work, it you almost kind of like you almost like attract these people that think that like think that your life is so perfect when it's not. Like even the most successful people go through their bad days. Like I've literally have actually met a family that's rich that were actually the most miserable.
Yeah.
Like paying for our bills and everything. Like money is a necessity when it comes to surviving, but I think the problem is so many people just show the good in the world, which is not a bad thing, but you should show the bad too, because life is good and life has good and bad. It's got ups and downs. So that's for me. That's my thing is and there's sometimes where I'll post a story and I'm like, oh, this is nerve-wracking. Like, but I'm like, just do it, right? Because I don't want to be fake, right? Like I just and I've actually by being authentic and real with my audience, I've actually had people reach out to me and be like, I can relate to you. Like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
right? And that to me is what makes what I do worth it, is those connections, and where it's like that. Like, yes, motivational speaking and the business world can be great financially, but it's when I become a successful on motivational speaker, it's the off stage connections. It's what makes it worth it is knowing that it hits someone in a good way, like knowing that it's like that light bulb went off in someone's head being like, aha, I got it now. Like that's what makes what I do worth it, right? So
I love that. It's so
yeah.
beautiful. It's so true. I'm the same way where if I see like other coaches who are posting about how much money they made or where they're going on vacation or what kind of cars they drive, and like, yeah, that's amazing. It shows you what's possible. But for me, I'm the kind of person where that doesn't make me want to work with them. I want to work with someone who like, yeah, is showing what they've gone through, what they're still working through.